This session is called Win, Lose, or Draw: The Impacts of Resource Development on Our Food System. It's a 1-hour session, and we have 4 panelists joining us today. And I thought that this topic would be particularly appropriate for a Terrace-based forum. This is the first time that we've actually asked this question at one of our events. And I was inspired by a presentation that I attended earlier, actually it was last year, on the cumulative impacts of resource development. And it was more on the environment. But I thought that that was interesting, and it kind of got me thinking, what are the impacts on our food system? And so I brought together a diverse panel of people to help me answer that question. And I wanted to let you all know that we've had speakers change over a couple times on this panel. So I've been trying to keep up with the speaker bios for it. But I really feel like we have the right assembly now of speakers, and again, I wanted to thank everybody so much for coming in today to share this with us. And I'm just going to look up the speaker bios here. Okay, so I'm going to start with Kieran. Okay, Kieran Christison. So a lot of you may know her from Daybreak Farms. She is the operations manager right now for the farm, and it's a family farm. And I've been having a lot of fun learning about Daybreak Farms. I mean, I knew it was in Terrace. That's about all I knew. But it turns out that actually Daybreak Farms is a really big deal in BC and in this area. It's one of the largest employers, too, in the agricultural sector. And Kieran was telling me the other day when we were up there that you're one of only 3 egg sorting facilities in the province. Yeah, grading stations. Yeah, very interesting. And so this is a family farm, and I guess it's been running for about 4 decades. Is that right?
We've owned it for over 20 years. My family's owned it for about over 25 years. But the farm has been there for 2 decades. Probably. So it's an old farm.
Great. So yeah, I wanted to thank Kieran for coming in and also for being a sponsor for our event today. That was really great. So next I'm going to introduce Bruce Currie. So Bruce is with Save On Foods. And Bruce says that he's been working with them for 4.5 years. But right now, he has a newer role that he's been in for 2 years, and he's the Energy and Sustainability Manager. Of course, that got my attention right away, and we had a big conversation about my background in waste management, too. So through the Energy and Sustainability Department, they oversee the electricity, natural gas, propane, water, sewer, waste management, recycling, and food waste diversion accounts for 171 Save On Foods and Urban Fare stores.
172 as of last night.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow, you heard it here first. 172
stores as of last night.
There you go. Okay, so their territory goes as far west as Port Alberni in BC and as far east as Winnipeg, and all the way up to Whitehorse as well?
Correct.
Okay. And their ultimate goal is to have zero food waste going to the landfill, and they plan to attain this goal by working in partnership with Loop Resources, Food Mesh, community food banks, and other local charities. So that's a little background on why Bruce Currie is on this panel. I think you'll agree he has something to share with us today.
I actually have something else to share with. Yeah. Back in 1965, I moved here with my mom and dad when my dad got transferred here with Scotiabank, and we lived here till 1969. But, so in 65, I was 2 years old, and I decided to go for a walk. So I went for a walk, and once my parents realized that I was missing, they jumped in their car and started driving around town. So they had the radio on, and so the story goes, they come on the radio and they say, if you're looking for a young boy wearing whatever, he's at the police station. So needless to say, Mom and Dad show up, and so I'm sitting up on the counter, and I said, "Hi, Dad," and that was it. So, anyways.
Okay, that was kind of random. I like random. Okay, I'm really glad they found you. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to reintroduce Michael because we do have some new people joining us this afternoon. Michael Dewar, he is the Director of Economic Development for the District of Kitimat. He works on a wide scope of activities to help support a vibrant local and regional economy. Before getting into local government, he was involved in food security and food systems work for almost a decade. In that work, he operated in a variety of capacities, including as a coordinator, organizer, researcher, and producer. His educational background includes food systems-related master's degree in natural resource and environmental studies from UNBC, as well as a certificate in food security from Ryerson University. He's always excited to learn about and discuss how to advance food systems and economic systems to better serve people, communities, and the environment. Another great addition to the panel. Thank you. Now, last but not least, and it's just doing it in alphabetical order, Will. William Marsden was born into the Ganita clan of Gitanyow. He started working full-time for the Gitanyow Chief's Office in 1999 as technical support, PC repair, web design, and eventually coordinator of the GIS department. As the chief of the Gitanyow Ganita, am I saying that right? Okay, thank you. His responsibilities now include assisting GHC staff on behalf of our Wilp on resource development on the Lac Siep, promoting Wilp sustainability, advancing the incremental treaty approach, reconciliation process, and Gitanyow, how would I say that properly without butchering it? Ayok, thank you. And that's a long table, right? Traditional law, thank you. So we have so much to learn from each other. Okay, his responsibilities as Director of Green Energy for GHC focus mainly on ensuring that the law is embedded into all green energy planning and that each WILP is directly involved in projects within their territories and drafting the Gitanyow Green Energy Plan. That's a lot of responsibility, Will, and I'm glad that you could take some time away from it to join us this afternoon. Thank you. Okay, so bearing in mind, like this is a lot of really diverse experience and backgrounds and responsibilities that this panel is offering. So it'll be interesting to see how the answers to the questions reflect that diversity. So the first question I have, resource development creates temporary population changes and land disturbances. Discuss the impacts these changes have on our food system in terms of production, in terms of access, and in terms of food waste recovery. Does anyone want to tackle that one? It's a big question. Okay, thank you, Kieran.
So just the population growth, and I can speak for me and what Daybreak is trying to do and is doing. It's a supply-managed industry, eggs, and so we are planning on getting more quota and getting a temporary allotment because they're not going to be permanent jobs. It is going to be an influx, and it's going to come down. So for the development, we are getting more quota, producing more eggs, and when the population goes down, the quota goes back to the board, and that's how we're trying to manage the influx of people.
So that's really interesting. Like, not all of us understand how the quota system works or how long it takes to make those changes. So that's sort of my follow-up question. So if you are asking for temporary quotas to address like temporary population increases, how long does that take, and what's the administrative burden on you to do all that extra paperwork?
Well, LNG isn't a new thing up here, so we've been working on this probably for the last 7 years, working with the board and convincing the board, who is made up out of producers, that we deserve the quota and not them down in the Fraser Valley. So it's still a work in progress, and I still have a lot of work to do, but 7 years and running, so.
Okay, and I really do want to reflect on the traditional food systems as well, not just more the conventional, what we can buy in the retail stores. So, Will, I'm just wondering if you might be able to kind of address that question in terms of access to food when there's resource development projects going on, maybe in a traditional territory.
Well, in Gitanyow, we've been negotiating with government and industry. We've got first the NTL went the project, and then LNG negotiations up. We're faced with multiple projects that have already impacted our population, but as far as the effect on our community, it's kind of a negative impact as far as the influx of population coming in. I mean, there are some people that can benefit, like local farmers, but as far as accessing the amount of food that you need, I mean, we've heard in the past that with the threat of natural disaster or anything like that, we really only have about 4 days of supplies. So that's you add the population influx, it really adds to that pressure. So at least that's our experience in Gitanyow. It's a little different in the urban centers, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that is a really good point. If there is a road closure and food trucks coming in are prevented from doing that, it's true, like most grocery stores only have 3 or 4 days worth of inventory. Some stores have more than that. Like we dealt with this topic with Bulkley Valley Wholesale Foods in year 1 of our forums, and they actually have like 7 to 10 days. They're a little bit special that way. But yeah, that's an interesting point. Bruce, did you want to talk about that?
Actually, yeah, I do. So when it comes from a global warming standpoint, for the last 5 years working for Save On Foods in facilities and then into real estate, I get the announcements that we have power outages. So over the last few years, we've had numerous power outages, both here and in the Lower Mainland, impacted by the winds. Now, a couple years ago, we were sitting in the office, and I got a ping on my phone, and there was a power outage, and it started at Burns Lake. And then this is coming in from our IT department. So Burns Lake, Bulkley Valley, Terrace, Kitimat, and you could just see it just came right across. So what had happened was BC Hydro lost the grid coming across the board there. So and knowing full well that we've got like a 4-hour window with our food safety, in terms of refrigeration, it has a huge impact as to whether we bring in generators. We have, a couple years ago, during the winter, the transformer in behind our store got hit. It was damaged and it had to be replaced. And a couple months later, we brought in a generator to maintain the store when they came in to replace when they came in to replace the transformer, we had a generator running for the whole day. So we are able to adapt if in those situations.
Okay, should we move on to the next question then? Okay. So the next question is, what if any changes are needed so that our food system can easily adjust to sudden changes in supply and demand? So that speaks to the resilience of our food system. Kind of makes a reference to the HOPE acronym again, like do we have the right infrastructure? Do we have the backup energy systems that we need? Do we have the education? Do we have policies? Policies not just for government, they're at stores and every kind of business has policies. Does anyone want to tackle that question? I'm kind of looking at Mike.
Kind of touching on this as well as I think it's reflective of the last question as well. Down in Kitimat, from a district of Kitimat perspective, we really encouraged industry proponents to bring in their own resources. So from a housing perspective, we saw through the recent Kitimat modernization project, the update or upgrade of the aluminum smelter, that it really created a lot of stresses on our community, a lot of stresses on some of those individuals that were vulnerable within our community. So that's where we've very much indicated to industry related to LNG that we don't want living out allowances. We want you to build work camps to house that kind of influx. There's no doubt there will be an increase in population due to the shadow population. However, it's not going to be that significant, 5,000 people working on the project. And similarly, not just on the housing front, we've also encouraged them. For a food systems perspective, we can't just bring in businesses, have them open up this quickly, and then better contract back to what the population will be like following the project or following a few projects. And so there again, with their work camps, they basically worked with the community to, I guess, make sure that they have food outlets or, food distribution systems in place to service their workers. And beyond food, also similarly with healthcare, we didn't want a big influx on our hospital, on our emergency services and such. So that's where we've worked with industry to ensure that they have those necessary capacities to handle their workforce as they come in, as they expand, and as they contract.
Did anyone else want to answer question number 2? I can repeat it again if you want. Okay. Okay, so I'll just repeat it for everybody. Okay, so what, if any, changes are needed so that our food system can easily adjust to sudden changes in supply and demand?
Just from, Gitanyow Green Energy Plan, we're really trying to reestablish the relationship between the local farmers and the retailers. There's also we've got, above everything else, the land availability. We've got traditional lands, urban lands that can be grown on, and in order for us to have a more secure food supply, we do have lots of local farmers that not really sure where their products are going, but there's plenty of farmers within the region that can form that relationship both with business and the First Nations to make sure that we are growing the amount of food that we need. So.
Yeah, that's a super interesting answer. There is a thing called a food shed analysis, where you actually calculate how much food you need to produce based on the number of people living in an area, and also based on the capacity of that area, just in terms of land base and soil types, to grow that amount of food or to harvest that amount of food. We do live in an area where, well, I don't know. I don't know what the percentage would be, but probably a lot higher than in urban centers. People that know how to identify wild edible plants and mushrooms and do go hunting and fishing. So that's very, very interesting too. So for the food shed analysis, that's not something that we have in our area. So I don't even know how much food would it take to feed everybody. If, say, we didn't have any food trucks coming in for a month, how much food would we need? I'm sure, though, an agency like Red Cross or something that does relief work like that all the time, they would have some estimates for us. Mm-hmm. That is one of the contexts in which I was thinking about root cellars and community food caches as well. Say if we did have a big wildfire that stretched out for over a week, Even the first responders need food, and if there's none in the grocery stores, how do we even feed them? So, that is something that I'm going to put on my wish list is can we have a community food cache, like at least enough for first responders when we have an emergency situation?
I'll speak to the emergency responders bit. When the fires rolled through Fort Mac, we one of the store managers gave the key to the store to one of the firefighters. So here, take care of this. It was good.
Does
So a food shed analysis is when you calculate how much food you would need to feed all the people within that defined area. So, like, for example, like Save On Foods, like they probably have, like this special inventory, and they sort of know, like, okay, well, Terrace has about 17,000 people-ish. How much food do we need?
Richard can speak to that. He's got his hand up.
So just like further to that question, when I first started looking into food security, I noticed that the health authority for the region of Waterloo in Ontario, they have done a food shed analysis. So if you wanted to look, Waterloo, that's a region in Ontario. Okay. So the next question is, where are the opportunities for our food system to benefit from resource development? And probably all of you want to answer this question. Mike, can I start with you again?
Sure. So I think there's a lot of opportunities along with this industrial development. We're going to see an increased population, which essentially results in increased market opportunities for local producers, as well increased prosperity. Whether it's more people looking to diversify their food options, but also for individuals that have struggled to find employment, that have struggled financially to access food. I think that this project is going to open up a lot of employment opportunities to see a wide scope of new access to food opportunities, I guess. As well as I think it's going to bring in different perspectives. There's going to be new workers coming in. There's going to be people coming from all different locations of the world. And I think that, we are a relatively isolated rural kind of part of BC. And I think that it's never a bad thing to have different perspectives coming through, and it helps grows the community. As well, I think there's some opportunities from that institutional commercial purchasing capacity. There's definitely challenges in local producers being able to produce at a consistency as well as at the quantities that some of the large-scale buyers will need, such as the work camps and such. But even in Kitimat, we're seeing a lot more catering opportunities. And I know there's a catering company that does really like to purchase local, regional produced foods to kind of showcase the region. So I think there's a lot of opportunities as well as it's going to bring in significant increased tax revenues. And that's going to be federally, provincially, locally. It's going to bring in increased opportunities for First Nations in terms of revenue sources. And essentially, I think that can trickle down. I know even the city of Terrace, as well as the district of Kitimat, a couple of the provincial agencies are a sponsor of this event here. There's a whole variety of means that tax revenues are necessary to operate our society. So a few of the ways that this proposed industrial development or this industrial development can be utilized in an opportune fashion.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Now, I know that a lot of you might have some things to add to that, so I'm going to let the panelists talk, and then I think what we'll do is we'll open it up to the general floor, and we'll use the rest of our time to have more of an interactive discussion. Does that sound good to everybody? Okay, well, okay. I'm underwhelmed.
Yes, it sounds great. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, opportunities for our food system. Who wants to go next? Anyone? Kieran?
Yeah. Well, I can talk on how it's going to benefit Daybreak. I think we're a relatively small farm. I mean, I'm running it, so it's not a huge corporation by any means. And if we can get into camps, if we can have contracts with camps, that's a huge big deal for us. I mean, that will make our farm. And we already have at least one contract. So it's great. I don't see, if you have a business in the Northwest, I don't see you not succeeding.
Okay. Will?
Yeah, sure. Well, in Gitanyow, we've got, as far as benefits for resource development, I mean, we've got social and economic benefits. The social, the economic benefit would, in Gitanyow right now, we've got an 8 megawatt biomass project that we've gone through the financing. We're going through the construction phase as we speak. So with that project alone, we've got 8 megawatts of energy that is focused on energy, and then from the biomass plant itself, we have upwards to 25 megawatts of waste heat. So, there's an opportunity there for, we've had consultants and companies come in and give us quotes, upwards of $1 billion worth of food that can be grown just from the one project in Gitanyow. So that's, one of the major project killers in our region is heat. So when you have a biomass plant that's got an excess amount of heat, then that really gives you the opportunity to save money on cost of energy and focus on employment and producing good food. So that's one of the benefits just from one project that we have out in Gitanyow, and we've got and that's an 8 megawatt green energy project. That's firm energy. Within Gitanyow, we're focusing upwards of 200 megawatts. So you imagine the amount of greenhouse opportunities that are tied to biomass projects, solar and thermal energy, like you mentioned. So all of that is being inputted into our plan right now.
Thank you. Bruce, do you want to have the final say on this question?
Oh, don't tell my wife this because I get the final word, eh? So Richard's going to have a workshop, I believe, at 3:30. So he's going to be talking about how to get your products into our stores. So one of the things that Save on Foods has always done, and we're very proud of it, is that we shop local, buy local. So he will walk you through that process. And as he was saying earlier to Jeremy, it's a bit of a daunting task, but it can be done. And it's a tremendous opportunity to get your products out on Highway 16.
Okay, so I know that there's going to be maybe some challenges and maybe some additional perspectives in the room. So if you have a question, maybe I can get a helper to move around with a microphone. Please stand up, and if you want to address it to a specific person, please name the person you want to answer your question. Okay, thank you. Maybe please say your name too, and then we'll all get to know everybody as they're asking their questions.
Hi, Marianne Shannon here. Will, am I correct in that you're actually going to take the wood off the forest floor to fill your biomass project?
Right now, the plan is we own a license within the Cranberry watershed, which is 89,000 cubic meters of annual cut. Most of that is going to the mill in Kitwanga. Some of it is going to the mill here in Terrace. But the focus is diverting all the waste off the cut blocks into our biomass plant.
I want to thank you so much.
There has to be more questions about this topic, please. Lanny?
So I guess I was excited about the opportunity just as a foodie, moving back up to my hometown. The one thing I really missed was access to like fresh foods in restaurants. It's pretty good in Terrace, Rupert and Smithers, but it's not so great in Kitimat. But the challenge seems to be employing people, right? So when there are so many higher paid job opportunities, I know in Kitimat, actually I have a friend visiting me this weekend, and the first thing she asked is, let's get crab. And I said, well, everybody asks that, but we're probably like one of the only coastal communities where you can't get fresh seafood. For a while you could, and it was down in the Heisla village. There was a restaurant there called Seamasters where the whole town was so happy that for a few years we could finally go and get fresh seafood. And as soon as KMP came around, all their employees went and worked in the camps, and it's never reopened. So I guess for me, on the one hand, it's this great opportunity that we might finally attract some good restaurateurs, but if they can't hire employees, or if they or their employees can't afford housing, how are we going to make that work? So I'm just wondering if anybody has ideas. How can we think outside the box to actually, get some independent restaurants instead of a bunch of fast food chains that don't offer healthy options?
I guess that's a general question to anybody that wants to answer it. And does anyone here want to tackle that?
I'll take a swing at it. So I guess thinking about it from what the District of Kitimat is trying to do, we have a couple different programs that we're working on. One is we're developing, and we just finished it, developed a community brand that's going to be used to advertise the community to the outside world. And it's going to be for the dual purposes of resident workforce attraction as well as for tourism attraction. But essentially the premise behind it is we're going to need people to fill a whole variety of jobs, not just the LNG related jobs. So it is a matter of bringing in those initial service workers as well. We've been working with a variety of other communities across the region as well, looking at opportunities to really bring in people from across the region, because this is going to affect the labor force for not just Kitimat, Terrace, it's going to affect the labor force for all of the north as well as the BC. So figuring out how we can, I guess, find commonalities with other groups to work together. In Kitimat, I think it's next week or the week after, through the Chamber of Commerce as well as other stakeholders, there's going to be a session for local businesses, how to recruit and retain employees during this period where there is going to be increased pressures on the labor force. So thinking about those education opportunities, as well as teaching employers that they may have to think in innovative and creative fashions to maintain employment and employees during a time when there is going to be a lot of draw to go to higher end or higher paying jobs. And in terms of looking at bringing in non-franchisee, I think was your specific question, restaurants. I think that's where we are working with a variety of different, I guess, entrepreneurs from across the region to identify opportunities to have those independent businesses. And I think that from the Kitimat perspective, I agree. I think there's a huge gap in terms of the food and beverage opportunities or services being supplied to the community needs, and especially to what will be the community needs soon. So I think that we are going to see a lot of businesses starting to step in and fill that gap. It's just a matter of you can't really move until you know that there is going to be that increase in traffic. And so it takes a bit of a lag period to start filling that gap.
Okay, I'm going to follow up on Lanny's question myself, because this is a conversation that we also have in Hazelton. So we've also had a lot of restaurants closed down, and for the same reason. Like, we can't get any cooks. All the cooks are working in the camps. They make $35 an hour in the camp, and they only make $15 an hour in Hazelton. So why? Yeah. So yeah, you really, it's hard to go out to have a bite to eat in Hazelton. So I guess my question then becomes, well, where is the responsibility then from the corporations that have the money to pay those big wages to help those smaller businesses that can't afford to compete with those kinds of wages? And it reminds me a lot of my years in waste management when we first started saying, oh, it's too expensive to recycle in the north. Remember that? We always used to say that. Well, some people still say that, but we used to say it even more. And I was like, well, you know what? it's not up to the North to pay for it. It's up to the manufacturers that are producing these products, that are creating the garbage, to help pay the costs of recycling it. And that's when the product stewardship regulations came in, and those are the programs that we're seeing today. So maybe we're going to see something similar happening in other resources. Garbage is also a resource, just like LNG and wood and everything else. So I really see that there is a shared responsibility here. And I think it is somewhat ludicrous to think that, people are just going to go work at a new restaurant in Kitimat and get paid $14 or $15 an hour. So I'm hoping that there's going to be some kind of strategy, some partnerships, and I'm sure the industries there are willing, because I see they do a lot of community grants, and maybe there could be a community grant to work on the food and beverage industry and making sure that it is competitive. Does anyone want to back me up or contradict me on that? And I know there's a question in the back. Is it related to my comment? Okay. No. Did anyone want to speak to what I just said?
I can.
Sure.
Actually, just to go back to what I mentioned earlier, just establishing a relationship with the local First Nation. I mean, just from the Gitanyow perspective, we do have, under the reconciliation framework, we have a very good relationship with the province, and we're working on that same relationship with the feds. So as we get to the table and we identify projects or needs of the community, we're actually able to get government one-on-one and lay the framework and explain what our needs are. And as far as getting capacity for, and also this is exactly, we need the promotion of food, locally grown food, but I just wanted to reiterate there is a very good a benefit to establishing our relationship with the local First Nation. Terrace here, we're on traditional lands. Identify the Samagat, the chief that owns the land. Get to know them. Go to the feasts. Our feasts are all about food, and we get the food from our gardens and our grocery stores. So there is that relationship that through the reconciliation process that the First Nations do have, that ability to get to the table with government and identify gaps that need to be filled. And food is a huge one.
I think there's a question at the back.
Yes, it's more of a follow-up to, is it Kieran, the Daybreak? Is it your name, Kieran? Sorry. I just wanted to mention, so Kieran made a comment about population growth and then retraction. So I just wanted to point out too that for the city of Terrace, like every business is going to plan accordingly, like however they see fit. But for the city of Terrace, we're actually planning for a growth scenario of about 25% population growth, and each municipality will probably have done their own population growth projections. We hired a local economist to do ours. So I just wanted to point out to other businesses in the room or people thinking about business endeavors is that you should reach out to your local municipalities to find out what research they've done to help inform your decision making, because we may not be looking at a retraction that we're used to. We're used to boom and bust in the north, right? This is different. What's going on up here is different. We're looking at so many projects that we haven't seen something quite like this before. So I just wanted to point that out as well for business planning purposes.
Okay, thank you, Danielle. That was Danielle Miles with the City of Terrace. For those of you who don't know her, she's the Economic Development Officer there. Did I see a hand up? Yes, please.
Hi there, my name is Sharon Helene. I'm the Health Director for Loch Coolams. I'd like to address my question to the gentleman who opened his store to the firefighters, which was very gracious.
I can't hear
So
you.
we'll just call you that. My question is with regard to putting BC produce in your stores. Because when I go into Save-On Foods, I see food that is stamped Washington, California, et cetera, but I don't see anything that is, when I ask the store managers, why don't you have BC apples on your shelves, and why are these strawberries coming from California? So you were saying that I'm not refuting that you stock BC produce in your stores, in your store, but a lot of people do not. So do you have a plan in place? I mean, there are people here who have farms. Do you connect with them so you can stock their goods in your stores? Or do you have a plan to do so?
Well, that's part of that. It will be with Richard talking about the local farms. But to answer part of your question, you're now accustomed to buying strawberries in the middle of the winter. So in the past, it's always been seasonal. We always got our stuff out of the Fraser Valley, and now you can get strawberries from around the world, or grapes, or. It's just there's an opportunity to buy everything that's out of season now, and it's part of our culture. It's part of what we've been doing for the last few years. Is we have this opportunity to buy the stuff and enjoy it. But having said that, sometimes it comes from great lengths to get here.
Okay, that's a great segue for me to say that there are still opportunities for year-round strawberry growing. And I think when we do our geothermal farming presentation at 3 o'clock, that we'll hear a little bit more about that. I see a lot of hands going up. I really want to give everybody a 10-minute break before we go into the next session. So we'll just quickly have some comments. Sam, you have a comment?
Yeah, sure. I just, it's kind of a comment and a question, but I'm really interested in the discussion around staffing things. So it's like, there's challenges with that. So if you're a small business and you're trying to employ, that's more restaurants, and we're seeing that challenge come around. And some of these small restaurants, like small independent restaurants, are the ones who are going to be able to buy some of our local farm, local raised goods. So I'm just interested in some of the retention practices or attraction practices. I'll flip around to my my hat I wear for the local ski hill, Shames Mountain. I sit on the board there, and we're finding an unprecedented change in how we staff it every year. It used to be largely locals, and now it's changing to a lot of people coming from across the country or internationally every winter. And the reason they come and the reason we were able to attract them is because we say, hey, look, we've got this really cool mountain, and we kind of sell it that way, and we're attracting a lot of people from out of town. It changes how we have to staff the place because we have to think about housing and everything. However, that whole attraction piece is really important. I think a lot of people are getting better at doing that. And I'd like to ask Kieran and the gentleman from Save-On, sorry, I forgot your name, how you think that best, how you do that. If you've got relatively entry-level jobs, I know you've got some higher-paying jobs as well, but what are your challenges with those entry-level jobs, and are you finding special ways? Is it lifestyle that you're selling? Are you able to say, hey, we have awesome mountain bike trails, we have awesome skiing, we have beautiful fishing and the mountains and everything, and a lot of services here, and a great airport, or what are some of the things that are really helping you to sell in, for Save-On, maybe a lot of rural communities that are challenged with the same thing we are? Because yes, you can go lean on a shovel for $30 an hour right now, or you can work in an entry-level position for minimum wage. So it's a difficult choice to make, and really big challenge in business. So I'm just curious to hear from two of you.
So for Save-On Foods, we have a huge turnover in our staff on a regular basis, and part of it is because the neighbor next door might be paying you a few more dollars. So yeah, if it's $30 or whatever, but like even Fort Mac, we had a huge problem there with employee retention, because everybody's going to go work in the oil patch and get the 35, 40, 45, 50 bucks, whatever it was. One of the things that I think we as a company have to sell our employees on is that you have a huge opportunity. This is not a 5-year opportunity. You've got an event for your life, potentially. And there's huge opportunities to grow within our company. But yes, I agree. Like it's hard to maintain that. It's hard. It's always going to be. There's always going to be someone going down the road because you're going to pay a couple more dollars. It's always a fight.
And it's the same for me as well. I have very labor-intensive jobs, but I find talking to my employees that they want to be home, they want to be in town, and they want to be with their families, and they'll take that pay cut. They don't want to be in camps. So I just need to find the hard-working ones that don't mind the labor. But it's a huge struggle. I have a huge turnover. And I definitely need to do some more work and market the job. Yeah, so thanks for bringing that up.
Okay, so one more. Oh, Jeremy?
Question for myself, yeah. It's just a question to Mike. Regarding what you said earlier about the camp wanting to source local, is there a vehicle to connect, like a networking vehicle for local producers of different products so these camps can find what's available locally?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of work related to that. For a few years, a group called Northern Development Initiative Trust, they did the Supply Chain Connector program, which was more geared for, well, I guess a whole variety of sectors so that I guess any major industrial proponents moving ahead would have knowledge of local opportunities in terms of procurement. For speaking to LNG Canada specifically, they do have policies in place in terms of their hiring as well as their purchasing policies. It is a huge apparatus. I mean, just the logistics behind that whole system, it boggles my mind how they are building something of that size. But related to that, they would have information on their website. I could also connect you with the right individuals. I think that there may be challenges at that scale because for their work camps, unless you're a producer that can be providing X amount of vegetables or X amount of beef at a very consistent rate, it may be challenging to enter that institutional work camp kind of thing. But I do think there's also a lot of opportunities. Like I say, there's kind of this spill-off opportunities. I mentioned that caterer for Kitimat that is really interested in local, regional produced foods. I think there's a lot of restaurants that are starting to bring that into their repertoire. So definitely there would be information on the websites as well as if you want, I'm happy to connect you with individuals within, LNG Canada as well as Coastal GasLink. But, and I think there's also a lot of opportunities with that kind of secondary benefits or impacts, so.
Josette?
I'm hearing that I just, I can't imagine as a consumer competing with this enormous work camps. I'm sorry, I'm not very enthusiastic about it. And having local fresh food. So if our local producers are going to cater to those work camps, we're hooped. We'll be even lower down the totem pole.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like in terms of being able to produce the quantity as well as the consistent quality for a purchaser of a 5,000 person work camp. Think about feeding 5,000 people every breakfast, morning, or breakfast, lunch, dinner. That's just huge quantities of food. So there is going to be struggles for the local food system to be able to enter that realm. But like I say, I think there is opportunities in the periphery of that major institutional.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Oh.
What I'm saying, the threat is for us, the local people. It's going to go from under our nose even more. So what I'm saying is what's needed is to protect local consumption of local product. I mean, you guys are jumping up and down because you see jobs and dollars, but us, we just want local food well done. And those local camps, they're going to consume our wildlife, they're going to consume our fish, they're going to do all of that. I'm seeing it as a threat. I want to hear the regional district, you're catering to those guys to protect the local population.
Thank you, Josette. Now, it's funny because before you said that, I was just kind of feeling like the title of this session isn't really getting enough attention. So I wanted to do a little show of hands for win, lose, or draw. So how many people think that for the food system, resource development impacts are a win, that it's just going to be all good news for our food system? I think that there's a few people that say yes. It's okay to say yes. I think it's just sort of interesting to know. Okay, so not a whole lot of people willing to say yes. How about like a lose? Who here is afraid it's just going to be like all lose? Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so you know. And how many people think it's like a tie? Like it's, yeah, interesting. So kind of it seems like a half the people kind of think it's a tie. Some people think it's lose. A couple people think it's a win. It's just interesting to canvass the room and see what the opinion is.
I think there's opportunities and challenges in everything, and I think we're going to face a lot of opportunities and challenges with industrial development, with growth, and it's going to be related to the local food system as well as our many aspects of life. So I think that we do have to accept that there's going to be benefits, there's going to be negatives.
So I think like hopefully this conversation is inspiring you to put some ideas down on the wish list. You know, maybe one of your wishes could relate to follow-up events to carry on this conversation or to develop specific systems that will make this a more positive experience for everybody too. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to close it down because I really feel like we all need a 5 or 10 minute break before we go to the next session. Thank you very much.